I guess what a lot of people fear when they hear evolutionary biologists talk about sex roles is that they're trying to sort of reimpose roles that were cast off in the 1960s and 1970s.
So this is an important misunderstanding. The roles that we have recently abandoned are almost unbelievably ancient. My favorite example involves looking at a flower that contains both male and female parts in the same structure. A flower that has both male and female parts has a difference of opinion within itself about how enthusiastic to be about sex with strangers. The male parts are gung-ho for it. The female parts, not so much. The female parts, in fact, at a structural level, are coy. They put the pollen grains through a test in which pollen tubes grow down through a long structure in order to reach the ova. So we can decide that we either do want to retain female coyness in some form or that we want to reject it. But what we can't do is decide that that was imposed by some sort of Puritan viewpoint amongst males in recent times. It's not. It stretches back far enough into the past that we can find it across the animal kingdom, and if we look into plants, it's separately evolved, but nonetheless the same pattern emerges there. So we should alter the dynamics of sexuality for modern times, and we should do so with fairness in mind. I'm very much in favor of this. I'm married to a woman who views the world in masculine terms. I mean, she lives in a way that makes sense in masculine terms. She goes to the Amazon, she enjoys adventure of a certain kind. I'm all in favor of women doing things that are not traditionally female, but I'm not in favor of pretending that femininity was invented by men to keep women chaste or something like that. It wasn't invented by humans at all.
Because this, I guess, is another part of the discussion, because from a sort of postmodern viewpoint, even using the words masculine and feminine, they assume that those are culturally defined, and then you get into a question, well, what do you mean by masculine, what do you mean by feminine? And you then sort of enter a language game in a loop where they sort of don't refer to anything. But what you're saying is they actually do refer to things you can study right down to flowers and to plants and to things that are not human.
There's actually a very simple story that accompanies this truth, which is there are very few creatures in which gametes are the same size. There's an unstable equilibrium in which gametes are equal size. And what that means is that gametes in any creature that has two sexes will tend to have one sex with small mobile gametes and another sex with large sessile gametes. Once you have that dynamic, you have an asymmetry in the interest of the parents in investing in those gametes. Small mobile gametes are not worth investing heavily in, and large sessile gametes are worth being choosy over because the investment that they contain is greater. Now that has almost nothing to do with us at a direct level, but every time we have had creatures evolve in which there's an asymmetry of investment in offspring, you get other things evolving as a consequence, like choosiness. It is natural that a creature that has larger gametes should be choosy. It is natural that a creature that gets pregnant should be choosy. It is natural that a creature that has offspring with a long childhood should be choosy. Now in human beings, we have a really interesting situation where men reproduce by two strategies. Men can love them and leave them, in which case they're not very choosy because why should they be at an evolutionary level? And men, more generally, invest in their offspring, in which case they have every reason to be as choosy as women do. So human beings are not some standard case from nature. They're a special case and an interesting one. But to imagine that females being more reluctant about sex was the idea of men who wanted to impose something on women is preposterous. It exists in birds, it exists in insects, it exists in trees.